All right, let's talk AFC North. We're talking Ravens, Steelers, Bengals, and of course the Cleveland Browns. This is an exciting time. Football is almost back. Training camp is almost right around the corner. There's a lot of good action going on as we get ready to see how these teams shake out. And right now, we're going to go through the AFC North, this bloodbath of a division, great division that we love to talk about, see how every team ranks and shakes, and see where they're going to end up as we go through the regular season. But before we get into this, I want to ask everyone watching this video that in the comment section below, we want to hear from you directly. Who do you think is going to win the AFC North? Give us your rankings of all four teams, how you think it's going to shake out standings-wise in the comment section below. But Miles, look, this is probably the best division of football. It's probably the funnest division in football. You've got great quarterbacks. You've got great defenses, great coach. Who do you think is really going to shake out for you as you get ready for the regular season? Is there a surprise team, or is this just the Bengals division to win or lose?
Yeah, Nick. So I think this division is probably, like we said, it's one of the toughest. When these teams go together in their divisional matchups, you throw everything out the window. They've played each other for decades. They know each other inside and out. It's always a struggle when these guys play each other. So that's where there's a few question marks here. And I think the teams here with the biggest question marks for me are the Steelers and the Browns. Those are the wild cards. Not saying question marks are a bad thing. I'm saying those are the teams where they could either be really, really above expectation or maybe a little bit below expectation, all dependent on quarterback play and development. First, let's get into the Steelers. I'm going to talk about them a little bit, then we'll know your thoughts. When I look at Steelers, I think this is a really solid team. I think Kenny Pickett had a lot of really bright spots last year. I think George Pickens, their wide receiver, had a lot of bright spots last year. And I think they've made some solid additions over the course of the offseason. The question mark for me is Matt Canada's offense going to be productive enough for Kenny Pickett to really break out of his shell, do some more deeper shots down the field, get things going, be more dynamic? I think that is going to be the question mark here. What do you think about that, Nick?
Well, I think the Steelers to me are the highest ceiling team and the lowest floor team, excuse me, in this division, because you hit on it. They've got a lot of question marks. If everything shakes out the right way, if Calvin Austin becomes a great playmaker like they thought he was going to be when they drafted him, if Pickens becomes a superstar wide receiver like he should be based on his talents, if Kenny Pickett can take the next step, there's a lot of evidence he will be, but obviously he hasn't done that yet. Can Allen Robinson revive his career with the Pittsburgh Steelers after a few rough years the past couple seasons? If all of those things shake out, and look, there's a lot of evidence they will, right? These guys have had solid offseason, a lot of momentum building in Pittsburgh. If it all shakes out, this is probably the best team in the division, right? They're probably actually even better than the Cincinnati Bengals or the Ravens or the Browns. But the other side of the coin, if it doesn't shake out, they're the bottom team in the division, honestly. And look, that doesn't mean they're going to be a 4-13 team. That means they're probably 7-10, 8-9, something like that. But I agree with you 100%. There's a lot of question marks around this football team. But I think the one wild card to me, my opinion, has to be Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. The question with Lamar, look, we know he's an MVP guy. He's won the award. He has, when healthy, he's obviously one of the best players in football. But what does Todd Monken's offense bring to him? What does the addition of Zay Flowers? Now you got Bateman, breaking news before training camp. He could potentially be hurt. A lot of concern there. Obviously, a lot of time till the game start, but anytime Bateman's hurt, raises some red flags over there in Baltimore. But to me, Lamar Jackson is the biggest wild card. If Monken can turn Lamar into an elite level passer, along with in his new offense, along with Jackson's physical gifts, there's no reason this team doesn't win this division. I was talking about Baltimore, and there's no reason this team doesn't make a Super Bowl run. And I think right now that's the biggest threat to the Cincinnati Bengals, in my opinion, because Miles, you'll remember this, and the Ravens fans will remember it too. Bengals fans will too. The Ravens were one Tyler Huntley fumble away at the goal line, for my opinion, beating Cincinnati in the playoffs. That's how good this team was with Huntley. You add in Lamar Jackson, healthy with Monken's offense, I think they're deadly.
Yeah, Nick, I think the Ravens, like you said, there are a ton of question marks. One question mark they do not have is defense. I think the defense is going to be stellar this coming season. They get Pierce back at nose tackle. That's going to be good. Kind of flip-flop Marcus Peters with Rock Ya-Sin. I think that's going to be good. Safeties, linebackers, everyone looks very, very solid there. But the offensive side of the ball, like you said, is Odell going to be back to where he was? That's a question mark. Will Zay Flowers be productive in an NFL level? That's a question mark. Will Rashad Bateman get healthy? He has not proved yet that he can stay healthy, so that is a big question mark. If those guys are all healthy, I think that's good. And there's another looming question mark here as well. Obviously, Ravens added Melvin Gordon to the running back room. That raises a question for me. Is Gus Edwards going to get healthy and be ready for the season in time? Will J.K. Dobbins sit out because he is part of that running back debate? Does he want the new contract? Obviously, he has health concerns as well. There's a question mark here. all of these things have players and ability to be really, really good, but it has to work out on the offensive side of the ball. So everything is weighing heavily on Lamar Jackson and that new contract shoulders, as well as Todd Monken's offense. That is the key to Baltimore doing really well this season.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And that kind of slides under the radar what the Cleveland Browns have done. And look, the Browns have had a lot of issues in terms of roster management. Of course, there's been a lot of memes over the past 2 decades with Cleveland, but the Browns should deserve a lot of credit. They've had a sneaky good offseason. They got two guys that I think are big time steals. They got veteran Elijah Moore, wide receiver slot guy from the New York Jets, and got DeJuan Jones, the offensive tackle. I think both of those guys are day one contributors, likely if they're both healthy, for the Browns. And this is a team, Miles, you talk about question marks. If Deshaun Watson can go back to being a top 5 quarterback like he was a top 3 quarterback just a couple seasons ago, there's no reason this team can't make a deep playoff run. That's the interesting thing with Cleveland. They're kind of in a similar dynamic with Baltimore, where if you look at them on paper, the team looks stacked. But how will it all shake out? How will Deshaun Watson continue to grow? Will Elijah Moore become a good player? Will DeJuan Jones become a quality offensive lineman? Because they obviously have a lot of tools. I think Stefanski's a great coach. I think he's a little bit underrated. First of all, let's talk about for the coaching for a second in this division. You go Harbaugh, Tomlin, Stefanski, and Taylor. I mean, this is an incredible division with coaching, incredible division with quarterbacks. You obviously have Burrow, Pickett, Jackson, of course, Watson. This may be the best division when it comes to quarterbacks and coaches in football right now.
Yeah, Nick, and defenses, they're all very strong defenses as well.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy in that aspect. But focusing back on the Browns for a second, I think this team, like you said, there are a very, very good roster, but they just have to battle through the question marks. Amari Cooper banged up a little bit through camp. Yeah. Is he going to be healthy, be back in time? If he is healthy and back, looks like a really good target for Deshaun Watson. It's going to be something really big. Like you said, Elijah Moore addition, really great there. Can David Njoku come back to former glory? This was a guy who's really athletic, really dynamic tight end. He's kind of fallen off a little bit, in my opinion, but I think he can get back to being in that top 5 category if Deshaun Watson can start feeding him the ball more. The defensive side of things, Browns have always had a pretty solid defense, so I think that is going to go the way that it normally does. But I just think, like you said, they got to answer the question.
Not to cut you off, does Myles Garrett get some disrespect? Because he's like the best player, arguably, defensively in football, not named Aaron Donald, but I don't hear his name talked about very much.
Well, you say that, but he's probably he's rivaling an Aaron Donald. They're just different positions. Myles Garrett from the edge, he doesn't quite have, he's not in the interior. He's not moving around the line like Aaron Donald is. Myles Garrett, I would say, is probably you could say he's the best player in the AFC. Like, this guy is really, really solid. I think that he is a generational talent for the Browns. And I think, like you said, this is a guy that if he's on your team, he's instantly an impact playmaker, Nick.
Just real quick, if you look at the PFF grades, Pro Football Focus, Aaron Donald graded out as a 90.5 last season. That's anything in the 90s is Hall of Fame level stuff. So obviously another great year from Aaron Donald. Myles Garrett, 92.5. So he's, according to PFF, he's actually a little bit better.
Yeah, for last year, he was better for sure.
Oh, yeah. But, you got to look at where he is, too. He's also a little younger than Donald. Donald took a few years to become who he's become. Garrett seems to be in that way as well. And, again, when you look at the Browns, great at defensive line. If Watson can take the step, a lot of great skill players. They could be a dangerous team. But that's the theme we're kind of getting to, right, as you and I are talking about this, the question marks with the Browns, with the Ravens, with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that leads us into obviously the 4th team, the favorite to win the division. In fact, let's go and transfer over to the odds real quick, Miles, if you want to throw this up. Because I think this is very interesting. The Bengals are the favorite to win the division. They have the best odds to make the playoffs and the highest projected win totals. You can see them on the screen in front of you. And I think the reason why, Miles, and it's kind of clear, is there just isn't as many question marks. I think the Baltimore Ravens could be better than the Bengals. I think the Cleveland Browns could be better than the Bengals. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers could be better than the Bengals. The problem is each one of those 3 teams needs to have a certain number of things go right. The Bengals don't really have a lot of question marks. The only concerns they have is, are they going to be okay at the safety position? And they got a lot of draft capital behind it. So that's probably their only concern there, in my opinion. Everything else they kind of checked off. Concerns about long-term running back. They locked up Joe Mixon. Concerns about the offensive line. Signed Orlando Brown. Is Jonah Williams going to leave? No, he seems to be okay going to right tackle, at least for this year. There aren't any question marks for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, look, they haven't won the Super Bowl yet. They've had back-to-back playoff runs. So maybe just getting a little bit better. Is that enough to hold off the Ravens? Is that enough to hold off the Steelers or the Browns? We'll have to wait and see. But right now, I kind of agree with the Vegas right here. They are the team with the fewest question marks, the fewest things to answer, and that's why they're the favorites. And I think it makes sense.
Yeah, Nick. And I think that is the key here. If you take the coulda, woulda, shouldas off the table, the Bengals are the clear favorites in the division. Everyone else has one of those things. Well, if this happens, then they could be the best. If that, the Bengals are the team where they are the best right now until proven otherwise. They have the best wide receiver core in maybe all of football with that trio. It's an argument there to put them at least top 3 for sure. They have a much improved offensive line. That was a big downfall for this team. They have probably one of the top 2 quarterbacks in NFL right now in Joe Burrow. The guy's really, really talented, and he's clutch. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. That's the one knock I give to a guy like Josh Allen. A lot of inaccuracy, a lot of interceptions last year. He's tend to not be as clutch as a guy like Joe Burrow. Not saying that he's not the 3 to that 1 and 2, but I think Joe Burrow just edges out there. I think the addition of Mixon for that a little bit extra bonus in the contract, it gives them that cushion, a little stability going the next season. But I think the biggest question mark, if this team did have one, people like to talk about the secondary, specifically the safeties. They lose Bates, they lose Bell. People say, okay, they're going to downgrade a lot. I don't think it's that big of a downgrade. I think those guys were good. I think they're maybe a little bit overrated as far as the contracts they get paid. I want to see Dax Hill come in. I want to see this guy. He's a very athletic young safety coming in. I want to see the young guys come in because I don't think that this is, that big of a downgrade. I think these guys can play up to a huge potential. Obviously, they have very good defensive back scouting because Cam Taylor-Britt last year, really good player as well. What do you think, Nick, about the defense? Do you think the safeties are going to be an issue?
I love Jordan Battle. I mean, I loved him as a prospect. I think he's listed as a safety, but to me, he's more of a guy who can do a lot of different things. I think at Alabama, they called him a star or a jack, whatever their defensive terminology was. Basically, he's just a playmaker, sort of in the Minkah Fitzpatrick role that the Pittsburgh Steelers have, another Alabama DB. First of all, you talk about these teams being full of great quarterbacks in this division, great defenses. These teams are chock full of great Alabama players. Maybe that's why they're so good. But I think their defense is going to be fine. We know their front 4 is solid. So when I look at this, Miles, and this is sort of in summation here, when I look, if I had to rank these 4 teams, if you told me today who was going to win this division, how it was going to shake out, I'm going to go with every bone in my body, every intelligent brain, every logical thing says you got to go with the Cincinnati Bengals. But I honestly think there is a hidden factor with Monken and the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. And the fact that the Ravens play the Bengals so tough, this division is going to be a bloodbath. We know all these games are going to be close. We know all these records are going to be close. I'm going to surprise you here a little bit, Miles. I'm thinking the Baltimore Ravens win this division. I'm projecting them to go 11-6. Bengals are going to be right behind them probably at 10-7. I think the Steelers and Browns are going to be fighting out for maybe a wild card spot around 9-8. But no matter how, all 4 teams are solid football teams. But I'm going with the Ravens number 1, Bengals number 2. I think both those teams make the playoffs. And I think the Browns and Steelers, one of those 2 teams will make it maybe as the final wild card. We'll have to wait and see. But that's how I'm thinking this division is going to shake out.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And I think that is why, there's not an unreasonable take to say there's 3 playoff teams out of this division.
Oh, no.
I think that it's entirely possible, and I think it's probably probable. How I would do it is I got to give it to the champs until proven otherwise. I put the Bengals right here. I put the Ravens right under them. They're basically neck and neck. We can do this for comparison's sake. Then a little bit below them, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. And a little bit below them, I have the Browns because they have the most to prove, but they also can come out and be very dangerous in this division as well. Like you said, I see Baltimore maybe around 11 and, 6, somewhere around that territory, 12 wins for Bengals. I see Browns and them having about 9-ish wins in that category. I think these are going to be really, really solid teams, and everybody will be in it for a playoff spot until the very last game.